Most gaming laptops on the market usually try to find some nice balance between performance and portability, and then they try to match that with a somewhat reasonable price that would just appeal to most people out there. But then every once in a while you get this, a chunky beast of a laptop that just goes for the best performance ever, no matter what. Now, it will be available in some more reasonable configurations as well, but what I have right here is the most high-end spec laptop that I've ever tested. It has a 150-watt RTX 3080 GPU, an Intel Core i9, 64 gigs of RAM, a 2TB SSD, and a very cool 4K 120Hz wide gamma display. Now, obviously, this also makes it one of the most expensive laptops on the market, and this configuration alone will cost you 4,000 euros here in the Netherlands. And even though I cannot really find the US pricing quite yet, it should be around $3,500 excluding taxes. Now, let's see what this MSI GE76 Raider can do. But first, this video is brought to you by HP and their brand new Spectre X360 laptop. This elegant, thin and light machine features Intel's latest i7 processor, high-resolution 14-inch OLED display with touchscreen feature, full set of connections, flippable top cover, and a fantastic battery life. All this makes it a perfect portable machine that will be strong enough to do anything you throw at it, yet light enough to drag around with you all day, every day. Check it out using the links in the description below. Even though the GE76 is a pretty big 17-inch laptop, it doesn't have one of those insane form factors that are impossible to carry. You will be able to fit it in a large, regular backpack, but do keep in mind that the laptop itself weighs about 3 kilos, and then you need to add even more to that for the large 280-watt power brick, so it is going to be portable enough to move it around the house or take it somewhere occasionally, but this is definitely not a laptop that you want to carry around with you every single day. Now, I am having some mixed feelings when it comes to build quality though. It feels solid enough, but it is all plastic, and even though there isn't too much flex in it, I do feel like it's missing a bit of that premium feeling that you do expect to get when you pay this much for a laptop. Now, the design itself is something that is very subjective, and you have to kind of decide for yourself if you like this look or not. It is quite a bit gamey with a chunky behind, large vents, and RGB. I personally do like the choice of a gray cover instead of a black one, and I think they did a really nice job with the soft RGB bar in the front. It just looks much nicer and more elegant than the simple strip that ASUS uses. It is easy to open it with one hand, and the panel and the hinges feel okay. Again, there is a bit of flex in them, which I'm not a big fan of, but it is sturdy enough. Because it is bigger than your typical laptop, the GE76 is actually really pleasant to use. There is a lot of space for your wrists without any sharp edges or lines. The touchpad is nicely off-centered to make sure you don't touch it too much while working, and there is obviously a lot of screen space, which I appreciate a lot. It is also a little bit taller than most laptops, which is again surprisingly comfortable in my opinion. Now, the keyboard feels a bit softer than most MSI laptops I tested recently, but it is really easy to get used to it and it will be fine. It does have an RGB backlight, however, I do wish it was a bit brighter to kind of match the front bar. Another big plus is the numpad, and I love that when you press the function key, all the extra functions will light up, making it much easier to control the brightness, volume, open the MSI software, and so on. The touchpad is a bit smaller for such a large laptop, but since this is clearly a gaming laptop and an obvious desktop replacement, it just makes sense to use a mouse instead. It will get the job done if you need to use it every once in a while, but it is, nothing spectacular. And of course, this laptop offers a lot of connections. On the left side, there's an audio jack, a fast 20 gigabit USB Type-C port, and a 10 gigabit Type-A port. On the back, there's the power connection, HDMI port, Ethernet, a 10 gigabit Type-C port with DisplayPort support, and another DisplayPort out. And on the right side, there are two 5 gigabit Type-A ports and a full-sized card reader. So there is a lot of connections overall, and they're spread out nicely so you don't have to have anything on the right side of the laptop that will get in the way while gaming. Now, as you probably know, things have changed a bit recently, so it's not so much about which GPU is in a laptop, but what is its power limit. So if you have a higher power 3070, it will outperform a lower power 3080, and that's exactly what happened to Aorus 15G, for example, that has a 3080, and that was outperformed by a much cheaper 15P with a 3070. But this laptop, it comes with a 150 watt RTX 3080, which is pretty much the highest possible power limit, and that should make it one of the, if not the fastest gaming laptop that you can currently buy. Now, looking at synthetic benchmarks like Firestrike and TimeSpy, you can clearly see the performance potential of this chip. It is just a class apart from anything I've tested so far. But in games though, especially on lower resolutions, it kind of really depends on which game you're playing. If we look at some older titles, it doesn't seem to help that much, with Far Cry 5, for example, showing an obvious CPU bottleneck. But when you compare it directly to the Aorus 15P with a 130 watt RTX 3070, things do look better. Now, a lot of games really do benefit from this high-end hardware, with differences going up to 25 or even 30%, and that is something you will really notice while gaming. But you can also see that there is a couple of titles where the 15P is still ahead, like Far Cry 5 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and this is because the CPU is just not getting as much power as on some other laptops. Compared to the ROG Strix G15, which is another laptop with an RTX 3070, the differences are even bigger. Again, some games don't really benefit that much, but many more do. Now, as you know, the performance of the G15 is very much so affected by the Nvidia Optimus feature that cannot be turned off, unfortunately, and the only way to override it is to connect it to an external monitor via the USB-C port. While this GE76 comes with a mux switch, and you can easily swap to a dedicated GPU mode for the best performance. Now, you do have to restart the laptop after you do so, but that's not really a big deal for such a performance increase. If we go up in resolution, the performance becomes more and more GPU bound and less CPU bound. And looking at the Quad HD resolution, for example, it just becomes clear that in a lot of titles it's the lower resolution that was holding back this laptop, with some games showing very similar frame rates on Quad HD as they did on Full HD. But going up to 4K resolution really does impact the performance by a lot. Now, there's a couple of titles that will work just fine, but some heavy AAA titles just don't run smoothly on 4K. And DLSS feature is very helpful, but it's not supported in every game. But nevertheless, I still think it's impressive that we're actually getting to laptops where a 4K panel is not just for work, and 4K gaming is actually becoming viable, but I still don't think we're quite there yet. So let's talk about this 4K 120Hz panel a bit more. Now, before, buying a laptop usually meant choosing between a fast Full HD panel that was great for games but lacked pixels for creative work, or going for a slow 4K panel that was great for work but lacked the speed. And with this one, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds here. I mean, it's not going to be as fast as the 240 and 300 Hz Full HD screens, but it will feel a lot faster than your typical 60 Hz high-resolution display. And it does that without hurting the color performance. It has an excellent range of colors, allowing both sRGB and Adobe RGB workflows. It has a great factory calibration and a good enough contrast. It also goes really nice and bright. 450 nits on a 17-inch display just looks very bright, actually. Unfortunately, not everything about this laptop is super exciting. The CPU, for example, is a bit underwhelming. Now, there is genuinely nothing wrong with this Intel Core i9. It is a great all-around CPU that can do pretty much everything, but it is outperformed by AMD's latest offerings, and it's also not able to pull that much ahead of Intel's more modest 8-core i7. So it's completely fine, but in my opinion, when a product says it has an i9, I do want it to be more than just, fine. If you can grab a model that has an i7 instead with a more reasonable price, I would be tempted to do so. Now, another topic that I'm not really excited about is the thermal performance, and MSI does have a habit of letting their CPUs run warmer before throttling, and 95 degrees here is just out of my comfort zone. MSI does ship this laptop in the extreme performance mode by default, which does actually show pretty good GPU thermal performance and a somewhat high but not extremely loud noise level. Now, there is also a simple performance profile as well that is supposed to be a bit more balanced, but it's actually not. It drops the fan speed by a lot, so it does get quieter, but the CPU still gets hot and the GPU gets a lot hotter than before. And if you go to the quiet mode, it kind of does the same thing, but then a bit more extreme. So it makes it a lot more quiet, but it's still pushing the CPU and the GPU temperatures quite high when stressing both. So the best thing here would be to just leave it in its default extreme performance mode, and then every once in a while enable the cooler boost when no one is around. And I just do wish they sit down once and make those balanced profiles that would just be great for everyone. That would be ideal. Now, even though it comes with a few more screws than usual, it is still pretty easy to remove the back cover and take a peek at the inside. You can easily clean the fans, replace the battery, replace the SSD or add a second one. You can upgrade the memory and replace the Wi-Fi chip. It does come with a Wi-Fi 6E by default, so you won't really have to do so, but you can if you want to. Even with the large battery, 99.9 watt-hours is pretty much the maximum legal limit that you can take on an airplane. The battery life just isn't that great. I got just over 2 hours in PC Mark test and 4 hours 40 minutes of just watching Netflix, and this is also another strong sign that this is just meant to replace a desktop PC at home. Now, the speakers are pretty decent actually. They can go quite loud without distorting much, and there is an okay amount of bass. For a laptop, that is. They didn't cheap out on the SSD either, as you can see, and the webcam is pretty average in my opinion. Hi guys, this is the test of the camera and of the microphone on the GE76 Raider, and as you can see, the quality is quite okay actually. I do have a lot of light in this room, so make sure you have a lot of light where you're sitting, but it's going to be completely fine for a business meeting or a school meeting or whatever you need to do with it. Just don't expect to stream with it. You will need something a bit better for that. That's it. And yeah, that pretty much covers everything here. The GE76 Raider is very much so a gaming laptop in every possible way. It is big, it is bulky, it is noisy, it doesn't have a great battery life, but it also offers the best gaming performance you can get out of any gaming laptop on the market. I also find it very important that it is very comfortable to use it for prolonged periods of time. It has a ton of connections, and the large 4K 120Hz display is pretty good too. It will be fast enough for gaming, but it will also be great for anyone that does a lot of creative work at home as well. So it is a very good laptop overall. But should you pay 4,000 euros for it? Now, the current GPU shortage really complicates the situation a lot and makes it impossible to compare it to a desktop PC. But even if you take pumped up scalper prices, you should be able to build a powerful ITX PC with a full set of high-end peripherals and a fast monitor for much less than 4,000 euros. And if you really want to go the laptop route, there are a lot of very good laptops out there for a lot less that might not be as fast, but will still get reasonably close. But if you just want the fastest laptop out there and you absolutely don't care about your money, this is the one to go for. Now, that's it for today. Let me know what you think about this crazy laptop in the comments down below. And while you're at it, go ahead and click that like button and subscribe to Tech Testers for more videos like this one. Bye guys, and see you in the next one. Bye!